All right, all right, all right. Welcome to Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blige, powered by the United Goalkeeping Alliance. We want you to come in, sit back, and enjoy a podcast all about goalkeeping on the pitch, sideline to sideline, and everything in between. Whether you're a coach, goalkeeper, a parent, we are exploring every corner of the position with honest conversations, pushing the culture of goalkeeping forward and opening up space for the discussions that matter. Kind of talk others shy away from, but booyah! We lean into it. No holds barred. Big thanks to our sponsor, the United Goalkeeping Alliance. We'll share more about the UGKA later in the show, but for now, let's get this party started. Here's Don, Blige, and Eric.
Hello, everybody. Blige here, Paul Blodgett, and along with Don Maples and Eric Eisenhut of the United Goalkeeping Alliance on our podcast, Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blige. And to say that I'm very excited to have the two guests on today is an understatement by far. Bob Reasso and Alexi Lalas, two humongous names in the game. And I know Don and Eric were very excited to meet you guys. So welcome aboard, fellas. Glad to have you here.
Nice to see you guys.
Thank you. Everybody looks good. That's half the battle in most of these things. I hope we sound good. So let's get to it.
Yeah, well, you're big time there with your microphone and all that stuff. I mean, you're like the pro, Lexi. So.
Listen, makeup and lighting. All right. I need as much. It takes a village nowadays for me. So
That's great. AI.
Well, listen, Bob is, if anybody has any problem with me being in a game of soccer, you can blame Bob Reasso. I met Bob in grad school, and he wanted to be a soccer coach, and I was just getting my master's in physical education and health, not really sure what I was going to coach, probably basketball because I played that for a while. But Bob reeled me into the game, and I'm very, very thankful that he did. And he's been my mentor all the way, helped me get out of high school coaching into college level. And basically, when I got to Rutgers, Bob asked me to come down and be his goalkeeper coach down there, and Bob gave me a free rein. He said, just do your thing. And that scared the heck out of me because I was like, I was never taught to be a goalkeeper coach. I was never taught as a goalkeeper. I just learned it on my own. So Bob just threw me into the rapids, and it worked out very well. But it was because of Bob's philosophies at Rutgers and his great friendship and his mentorship that got me to where I am in the game today. Bob had a phenomenal career, and his career is still going. I mean, I've never met a man in my life who is so motivated and so driven and is so into what he's doing as Bob is. He knows everything about the game, nationally, internationally. He was at Rutgers for 29 years, phenomenal record there. He's been coach of the year twice. He was A10 coach of the year. I mean, just the accolades along the way. We could spend the whole thing just talking about Bob and what he's done. But the good thing, the thing you really want to get across to everybody is what a good man he is, what a great leader he was, and how many people he's influenced to go on to do great things. And to call you a friend is a wonderful thing that I'm able to do, Bob. Welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. I paid him a hell of a lot of money for that. So
certainly did.
I'm glad. I wrote it down for him too. So actually, we've been friends for, I was counting it up, like 50 years. Yeah. He's been the best man in two of my weddings. So, we've got a lot of history between us. So, yeah, and, it's just a pleasure to be here. I'm thankful. And, of course, always a pleasure to see Lex, one of the, if not the greatest warrior I've ever coached. So it's just tremendous to see him. So.
Yeah, it's great. By the way, I told Bob at the second wedding it's not going to happen the same thing again. I had a better speech, I think. Maybe it'll see. Maybe it'll come out a little bit better, but I know
you did fine, Blige, both times. So
yeah, thanks, brother. And the other I'm talking about powerhouse people, Bob, and then now Alexi Lalas. I mean, Lexi played for us at Rutgers. Lexi was a phenomenal athlete and human being probably since he was born. But he was a all-state Michigan player, or player of the year in Michigan, I think. All-state hockey player. He won just about every accolade from Rutgers and they're on it you can, including the Herman Trophy, the Missouri Athletic Trophy, Honda Player of the Year, U.S. Athlete of the Year, MLS Best 11. He won the MLS Cup, Supporters Shield, Lamar Hunt Cup, CONCACAF Champions Cup, played for the national team, played Italian. I mean, Lexi is just I just really enjoyed watching your career, Alexi, because you went after it, man. And you were a driving force wherever you went. And I was so fortunate, and I know Bob was as well, to be able to watch you in your career at Rutgers, because you were an amazing player, amazing leader, and like Bob says, a great warrior. I don't know if we've had any other player come through Rutgers has been the warrior you have. So we're very, very happy to have you here, Lexi. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It was very nice you to say. When I heard about this and when you asked me, I said, hell yeah, this is great for a number of different reasons, not the least of which is to hang out with two guys that, I mean, fundamentally changed my life because of the time that I spent at Rutgers. Yes, you made me a better soccer player, but more importantly, you made me a better person for the experiences that we had both both on and off the field. By the way, Coach, Bob, not that I want it to happen, but I'm just saying I'm available for the third, okay? For that third best man. So I don't want it to happen, but if it comes up, all right, I think I can take down Blodge. All right, I got stuff in the locker that I can bring out. But anyway, it's wonderful to be here. I can't wait to talk about all these wonderful memories. But like I said, when I look back in my life at people and moments that enabled me to be here talking with you today. Absolutely, my time at Rutgers with Blodge, with Bob, and everybody there, like I said, fundamentally changed the trajectory and the course in a positive way of my life. So can't say enough good things about Rutgers.
That's awesome, man. I tell people two quick stories about Alexi. Is I didn't have your cell number, and I was watching you on TV. I don't know if it was one of the Olympic games or what it was, but I asked Bob for your cell, and you were on one day, and I noticed that you looked a little scruffy, like you hadn't shaved that day. So I texted Lexi while I was while I was doing his performance live, and I expected nothing. Lexi gets back to me during the commercial break. And told me, says, yeah, I was a little lazy when I got up. And boom, that was it. Short and sweet. But and the other big thing that Lexi did for me, and Lex, I wanted to publicly thank you for this, is when was it the Olympics with Peter Schmeichel? What was that? Was that the
we did the Euros.
Euros. Did the Euros, and Peter Schmeichel was there. And Peter Schmeichel's been he's one of my heroes. He's one of my idols in the position. And I think I texted Lexi and let him know that. And I was disappointed I couldn't be there, I guess, just experience that. So what's Lexi do? He has Peter Schmeichel send me a video busting my chops about, hey, Blodge, nice to meet you. Sorry you're not here. You missed a great opportunity of meeting me and that kind of stuff. But I still got that saved because that was a high for me, Lexi. Thanks, man. That was very
My
cool.
pleasure. My pleasure. I think Peter's going to be joining us this summer for our Fox coverage of the World Cup too. So really interesting dude. Obviously an incredible goalkeeper and an incredible career. And I like listening to goalkeepers. I know we'll get into it here in a second, but goalkeepers are a necessary evil, if you will. Right? You can't live with them. You can't throw them off the bridge, right? But also let's be honest. From a defensive perspective, they're going to save your ass, and so I kind of have to have them around. So we'll get into it here. But my relationship with goalkeepers over the years is like a relationship with a girl or anything like that. Yeah, you have your ups and downs and your ins and outs, but when it all is said and done, you want them around.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank God for that, Lex. All right, let's get into it. What we're going to do here today is because Bob is one of the things he's been known for in his coaching career is being a defensive master. Okay. So what we'd like to talk about is how is defensive culture important to team success? And then from there, we can get on to the importance of the relationship between the head coach, the defensive unit, and the goalkeepers and the goalkeeper coach, and how Bob was able to meld the goalkeeping position into all that to make it such an iron wall back there. Defensively, we were unbelievable, and to a point where we get up one goal. I want you to bring up that thing, Bob, too, about scoring the goal first. That record which blows me away. But when we get up 1-0, people would fold because they knew they weren't going to get anything against us, and that's an incredible confident builder for the team. So Bob has shoot up with you first on Rutgers is obviously good evidence of the success of a defensive culture, defensive mind. How did you get into that? I know you played defense in college, so how did that experience get you going to where you focused on a defense and you became, well, the master of what I consider the master defensive organization?
I think that, most coaches don't like to train defense because players don't like to do it. So, and every time we get together with all our alums, they want to get right away. They take the piss out of me by getting into the defensive stance, and they've done that a number of times. But, we've really broke it down to individual, small group, and team defense. But, really, you look at it more as a unit. The whole team has to defend, not just the back four or the goalkeeper. And I was always felt, and Blodge and I had a kind of similar education when we started coming up with goalkeeping. First, we saw the great Joe Mashnick at the NCAA courses. Of course, then I had Blodge for all those years. And then we got to be friends with Franz Hoek. He now calls him the goal player, and so I always felt that as long as I had a goalkeeper coach, I didn't care if I had 30, 40 players. If I had a goalkeeper coach, we could win. And we would build that structure together. We did a lot of work, like I said earlier, on small group, team defense, et cetera, et cetera. We used to do warrior training too when we were at Rutgers. I'm sure Alexi remembers it, where we'd have goalkeepers in the goal, and then we'd have backs versus midfielders versus forwards, and play balls in. And usually the backs won because they were so courageous. But it was always really good synergy. And look, let's face it, we were blessed, especially during Alexi's era, with great goalkeepers. And let's face it, guys, players make coaches. It's not the other way around. So we had David Beretta first, an unbelievable goalkeeper who took us to the Final Four. And David's a dear friend of mine now, but Blodge and I had a really hard decision to make because Billy Andrecki had transferred in, who wound up having a great pro career and was with us at the 90s, in the 90 run. We had to choose between David Beretta, who had taken us to a Final Four, and Billy Andrecki, and we went with Billy because at that time Billy was better. But the greatest thing about Blodge, because he was able to work that relationship and keep those two guys competitive in practice. And David never put his head down. He's still a dear friend. So much of what you do with players is about building relationships, building trust, and then building a fighting spirit. And I was lucky I had Blodge for all those years, and we were able to do it. And we had some very good players. So.
That's cool. Lexi, how did you feel with coming into Rutgers? Did you have any idea about, you recruited us, right? Or contacted us, I guess?
That's a mixed up story, but we'll get into it.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, because I'll get it screwed up again. So,
well, how I got to exit 9 off the turnpike, that's maybe for another day. It's a much longer story. But when I finally did, and my dad kicked my ass out there and said, good luck. Look, I grew up in Michigan. I did not grow up on a farm, okay? But I was kind of hayseed when I showed up in New Jersey, especially relative to New Jersey in the 80s. And I'll never forget, you were talking about, defending, right? And I did not grow up defending, or I did not grow up in a soccer environment where that was a priority. And from day one, when I got to Rutgers and we got to preseason, Bob and the staff made sure that everybody understand. We talk about identity all the time and culture all the time. They made sure that everybody understood from the very first training sessions in little small squares where we are defending and showing people wide or showing them inside and having a trailing defender coming back and where that person is supposed to go and using the sideline as a defender, all those different things. This was a new concept for me, and which is why going to Rutgers and going out to the East Coast was so important for me to actually think about the game completely differently, to think about defending, but just to think about how I played the game in a completely different way as opposed to just winging it. And that was where you stood on the field, where you were in relationship to the other players. And that was also your communication and your understanding and your coordination with the goalkeeper. And again, it was impressed on us early that these weren't just some people that went off and trained on their own. There's like nobody's going to come on your show and say, "Oh, we don't have any relationship between the goalkeepers and the players." But the reality is, there are some programs, there are some teams where it's viewed as kind of like a kicker in the NFL. Again, a necessary type of evil. You use them when you want, but especially in this day and age, ignore it at your own peril in terms of integrating the goalkeeper into training and understanding and valuing and respecting what that goalkeeper can do. And not just saving the ball nowadays, but actually acting in the modern day as a fifth or a fourth or whatever you want to call it, defender that distributes, plays out of the back and does all that kind of stuff. But even back in the 80s, there was an understanding that you need to have a respect for who's behind you because they can help you do your job. And then in general, the culture that you guys instilled upon us from the very first day of defending is going to help you win. Defending is going to actually help you score.
Yeah, that's good. Don?
What?
Don, you had a question?
No, I'm just happy to hear that because we've heard just the opposite in a lot of ways, and what we've experienced across the country. We talk to different coaches, with me being at the ODP level and then region and then sometimes national. Those relationships, there's not a synergy there. We are a necessary evil, and we're made to feel that way. So
it's a shame. It's a shame. It shouldn't be that way.
No.
Yeah, we go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just thinking to the point of, like, I want to hear more, Bob and Lexi, regarding Blage's role. So as a goalkeeper coach, like, Bob, what did you trust Blage to do with the backs? Like, when you guys are, like, let's say you're in the middle of a training session and you get into a small-sided game or even 11v11, coaching from inside the goal is now becoming more and more normal. 30 years ago, I'm dating us here, right? But at the same time, you guys were probably one of the pioneers of actually doing that, connecting with that back line with your goalkeepers in the back line. And where'd that come from? And then how'd you get to trust Blage? Because what we see a lot is head coaches don't trust goalkeeper coaches, and they don't want them, or not want them, but they're not part of the team training environments.
Well, it starts first with our friendship. We were best friends our whole life. So, since we were grad students, I think it started there, but it's just our working relationship. For me, I gave Blage carte blanche, whatever he wanted to do with the goalkeepers. He always had sessions with the goalkeepers all the way back then that were separate from us. But then as soon as we went into small-sided games when we were working with the backs, and sometimes we played with three at the back in those days, because you got to remember, we were marking and sweeping back in the late 80s or early 90s until Blage and I went out and studied all over the world and started to, change our own philosophy. But, he always had control over how we played, how we defended. And when we got into exercise, I might be running a whole exercise, but he was always working with the goalkeepers, talking to the backs, making sure they were communicating, making sure they were closing people down. And really, the goalkeeper has the best view. They have the view of the whole game. And, and the other side of it is, too, Blage was always my kind of my compass and barometer. Because as Alexi will tell you, I can be intense and passionate, and I still am, unfortunately. But Blage was always the one that would kind of, bring me back down to earth and try to make me understand everything. So it's a lot of it just grew organically from our relationship and our friendship and our trust in each other. And that's lasted our whole career.
Did you have, like, each day a topic that you wanted to work on primarily with the defenders, and Blage would set up his sessions to mirror that? So when you came into the group, it was all flowing.
Yeah, I think so. But I also think that, like I said, Blage had carte blanche. He was in charge of the keepers. He was in charge of the keepers when games started. We used to compartmentalize the team a little bit. I'd look at the overall group. Blage would be looking at the backs and the goalkeeper and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So he always had carte blanche. He always had the as much of a say as I did in what we did and how we went about things. So, and we would always talk about what we were going to do on the field for training, but it was a give and take. It wasn't me saying, "Hey, this is what you're going to do." He's saying, "Look, this is what I'm thinking of doing today. How do we work it into the next exercise and the next exercise?" So it's really a partnership more than anything else.
That's what we're finding at the highest levels, like with Chris and Anson, Phil at Philadelphia, things like that, is that there is that relationship. There is that collaboration between the head coach and the goalkeeper coach. And at the highest levels, the successful teams, that's what they have. The ones that are, I want to say, semi-successful, they don't. And it's they're only, like we've said before, necessary evil. So that is great, especially that you trusted Blage that much.
It's a miracle, but I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Lex, you could probably talk to it too, right? I mean, let's face it, that group we had at that time, the 89, 90 who went to back-and-back Final Fours. I mean, they were tremendously gifted guys. I mean, I think we averaged in 90, 4.6 40 on the field. They were tremendously athletic, and the fighting spirit. One of the things why we also spend so much time on defense is it builds esprit de corps. You're fighting for each other, and the the fighting spirit in that team was amazing, and I'm lucky thing they weren't, accumulating yellow cards in those days, because I think Lex probably had average a dozen a year in those days. He would have been missing a lot of games. But listen, it was late in games too, and we would say we needed a goal, and we would throw Alexi up front, and somehow we'd figure out a way to get a goal. So I think a lot of it, as I'm sure Lex can speak to, was esprit de corps amongst our group, and the willingness to sacrifice for each other, and the willing that everybody was in the same team and everybody was pulling in the same direction. So
yeah, it was obviously a different time, so much so that I knew that I could take a yellow card every single game, and I knew that I had one hit. I could line a guy up from far away, and I knew I could, take him, the ball, the first 3 rows of the stands, and unless there was protruding bone, it was basically just a yellow card. And then you got going on, and you kept that in your back pocket to play at different times. I will say about the culture, I'll never forget. I came there in the I guess it would have been the summer of '88, and we started in the fall of '88. And again, I had never been to, this type of environment, never been in this type of soccer environment. I also had never been in New Jersey and what New Jersey is and what people from New Jersey are about. And I'll never forget a halftime speech early on in the season at Army, I think it was. And Bob brought us in, and we were not playing well, or we were not playing up to his whatever the hell he wanted at that point. And he wanted to make it very, very clear. And I'll tell you what, I heard words that I had never heard before, but I knew that they were bad and would probably get you put in jail in many, many countries. And certainly nowadays it would have been just crazy. But it was out of love, but a little tough type of love. And then when it came to the way that he integrated his staff, because you can call it a goalkeeper coach, but it's an assistant coach, right? And we all know that in a team, the dynamic, they have to have a leader. And ultimately, that's the voice that you listen to and makes the final decision. But you take all of that information from everybody else. And oftentimes, an assistant coach is put in this strange situation. Blodge can speak to this, where you're the conduit with players, and you're sometimes their psychiatrist, and sometimes you're there to kind of just be a shoulder for them to not cry on, but oftentimes whine on. And I think Bob was really good in establishing people around him that he trusted, like he said, that he gave some autonomy to, but also with the recognition that he needed to make those choices, and he needed to lead, but he was making an informed and educated decision because he included everybody around it, whether it was privately or whether it's publicly, and even stuff that you don't even think of, like how you set up in front of in a locker room when you're talking to your team, and where the assistant coaches are, and how you integrate them even in that moment. Little things matter. I'm sure every coach that you've talked to says little things matter, and even in the moment as a player, you might not pick up on it, but it is ingrained. And you see that respect, and you see that relationship, and then the way that you look at an assistant coach, whether it's a goalkeeper coach or anything else, can sometimes change because of that. And you really got to be careful, because if you don't foster that, you can establish bad patterns, and you can establish some difficulties that, crop their head up usually they manifest at the worst possible time. So you really got to be on that. And I know Bob, from a coaching standpoint, was always really cognizant of what he needed to do to establish the group around him that was going to coach these players. Because as he will tell you, and as Blodge will tell you, we were not easy to coach.
They were great personalities. I think it's changed a little bit, and I don't want to jump in on Lex, but the 20th century athlete compared to the 21st century athlete. I still coach now. I coach more than I did when I was a college coach. The 20th century athlete was, God, they were easier to coach to a lot of extent. It wasn't so self-absorbed, and they could take a little bit of tough love, but they also gave each other tough love. Mm-hmm. I mean, Lexi was laughing about the yellow cards, but God forbid somebody kick Lino DeQualo, one of our forwards, during a game. Nowadays, one of your guys get kicked, and the rules have changed. You can get thrown out of games and stuff. But in those days, Alexi be the first, the next guy to touch the ball got fouled. And then Chris Beach might do it, or, somebody else might do it. It was a different time. It was a different way of football, but the reality was it was all about the collective group. And look, I always say that assistant coaches or goalkeeper coach, whatever the case may be, they get their respect from the staff or from the players, let's say more importantly, in direct relationship to the respect that the coach gives. when they're allowed to have their say, when they're allowed to make decisions, like Lexi said, it's a subliminal message to the whole group that they count, they're worthy, and what they're saying is really important. So, they have an opportunity to get involved. And again, we're lucky to hang out with Blige, the man with 1,000 nicknames. So,
Well,
only a few we can share on this, by the way.
yeah.
I do have a question for you regarding the collective group. Like, Bob, how did you get the team to buy into the defensive thought process versus the offensive thought process? Because what we were referencing earlier, a lot of coaches just focus on the offense, focus on in possession. I mean, some people will look at a goalkeeper and say one of the number one things they're looking for is them to be good with the ball at their feet. Like, to me, that's kind of crazy, but at the same time, that's the way I guess the game's evolving. Bob, how'd you get them to buy into that culture?
Like Alexi said, they didn't have much choice, really. What we used to do always is, and this is the way I think, I've watched a lot of great coaches and know a lot of great coaches, the first thing you do when you go into preseason camp is you try and establish how you're going to play defensively. How are we going to be organized? How are we going to win games? How are we going to not give up goals? We spent just as much time working on attacking, but we put that foundation in first. And again, when you have athletes like Alexi and Chris Beach and David Mueller and Alina DeQualo, I mean, those guys, because of their own relationships, which were so unique, they would run through walls for each other. There was never, oh, coach, what are we doing this for? Which is okay. You never mind answering your players why they're doing it. They just said, let's go. And whatever they attacked, they attacked it like with tremendous passion. I spent a foreign tour with Anson Dorrance. We went on an Adidas tour together, and I learned a lot from Anson. Anson's a great coach. But one of the things he said to me was that he had to make his girls compete in every exercise. So they would actually keep track of every exercise they ever did and what they did. Who won, who this. So we went back, and it was actually when Alexi was playing, and we kept track of it for a season. Now, you don't have to do that as much with men because they're just, at that time, they were just more naturally competitive. But the cream always rose to the top. Whether we were playing small-sided games or heading exercises, guys like Alexi and Chris Beach and those guys, your real warriors, were always at the top. But that passion that they bring, you were either in or you were out. If you didn't buy in, you were out. So, and it's always best when your great players buy in. Boy, it makes everything easy because everybody follows suits. When your great players don't buy in, that's when coaches have problems.
So, Bob, I want to go back to something you alluded to that, the team would fight for one another. Lexi, you talked about you could line people up with a yellow, get a yellow card. And then you alluded, Bob, to the 20th century player. So how do you think specifically it's changed? And this is for both of you because you see it at all levels. Like in college, you've got the NIL now. And now you see players, they're not so loyal to the school or the team. It's about how much money they're going to get. And how is that carrying into, particularly on the men's game, into the pro side and then now with the national team? Because we're starting to see, in my opinion, more individualism at the national level instead of a team bought in. Like Lexi, with the group that you played for on the national team, it seemed like you all were just all in with one another. And that led to success. Am I wrong, or do you see a difference today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that any of us want to just grumpy old man this thing and say, oh, it's the best thing in the world and stuff like that. I mean, sports and countries and cultures evolve and things change. And inevitably, older people will look back with a sense of romance and nostalgia. And it's not always better. I will say, you mentioned Anson Dorrance. I remember having a conversation with him last year, a couple of years ago, and he is, like Bob, one of these legends, but has seen college soccer dramatically change. And you mentioned the competition and the importance of competition. Whereas in the past, when we're at Rutgers and we're competing, you had nowhere to go. You had to compete. And you won, you lost, but you couldn't just, F off and go someplace else. And, Anson was saying, I recruit, and it's Anson, so he recruits the best, but they're all coming in. And if after that first year they're not playing, they're out of there. They're gone. So there's no progression, both in terms of their talent and their evolution as a player or as that team. So it's very, very difficult to do these things now. So again, I can say, yeah, we were much more into it, and we were much more committed. I don't know if that is the case. I don't know what I would look like in today's soccer if I came out. Well, I know for a fact probably I wouldn't even have gone to play collegiate soccer, and we're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I know I'm talking about a lot of different things here, but my point is that we can lament and we can talk about the good old days, or we can adapt and or maybe try to repurpose some of this stuff, because college soccer, I know it's a much longer conversation, is still an existing infrastructure that was tapped once and I think could be tapped again for the greater good of the game, but also for the development of players going forward. But the mentality, that doesn't change. I do think that it's nature and nurture and all that kind of stuff. I do think that if you put players in the right type of environment, that they will rise to the occasion. They'll either develop it or they'll discover what they didn't know they had. And maybe we're not doing that enough with this generation of players to see some of the attributes that you're kind of talking about here, and putting them in these situations where you got to compete. And again, you can't just give up and go someplace else.
We will be back after this message from our sponsors.
Hello, clubs. What is your goalkeeper culture like? Do you have 1 to 2 people that just does it all, whether they're down the other end of the field running a goalkeeper training session? Maybe they're helping a head coach out in a team training session. Maybe they attend all tournaments and games and give in-game feedback. They help with individual development plans. They help in the recruiting initiative. Simply put, they can't do it all. Here at the United Goalkeeping Alliance, we're here to be your supplemental resource for all things goalkeeping. We start with education. We will help assist in the goalkeeping development through educating your goalkeepers on goalkeeping specific topics featuring the 5 elements of development: your tactical understanding, your technical abilities, the physical growth of a goalkeeper, the psychological balance, and the leadership skills needed to be a great goalkeeper. We have over 250 hours of recorded content for all of your goalkeepers and coaches and parents to take advantage of. We offer mentorships for both goalkeepers and goalkeeper coaches. We offer lesson plan support and curriculum support for coaches. If you'd like to learn more about the United Goalkeeping Alliance and how we can help your club get to the next level with your goalkeeping culture as a supplemental resource, please utilize the contact information above. This is Eric Eisenhut of the United Goalkeeping Alliance, and now back to the episode.
And now back to our episode.
Yeah, well, Lex, it's like Bob's actively coaching in the game at the high school and post high school level and so on. But Don, Eric, and myself are very much into from the 8-year-olds up to whatever level. And I gotta be honest with you, the lack of respect might not be the word, but maybe it is, of everybody towards the goalkeeper position right now, and to the defensive structure, to be honest with you, is basically non-existent. I mean, I'm with the ODP program in Jersey, and we go compete against in some of these tournaments against other states, and some of these states are so organized defensively, and we may not be as organized, and we're getting beat, and it's all because of the organization. People aren't buying in. Plus, I think maybe it's because they're with their club team, they're with their high school team, they're with ODP. They're getting hit from so many sides. I don't really see the consistency of a progression of education of how to play the position as a goalkeeper, how to organize the defense, how to get the defense to do things for you, have the head coaches understand the importance and how to develop a defensive unit with the goalkeeper as the lead.
But how does that jibe though with this? All I've been told here is that it's all about competition and it's all about winning and losing. And so if it's all about winning and losing, whatever enables you to win enables you as a coach or enables you as a club to prop that up and say, here we win. But if you're telling me that they're not focusing on defense or they're not, giving the value to the goalkeeper, and then when you go up against others from around the country, you're not doing as well, wouldn't that change behavior, that in and of itself? So what I'm saying is these coaches have to decide in that moment that this is what I want to do, because this is the best course for either him or her individually, or they truly believe that this is the way to win.
Well, if anybody else sees anything differently, yeah, I'd love to hear it as well. But what I don't see is, it seems like in a lot of the clubs that I work with, and the levels I work with, it's more about, okay, how can we score goals? We'll get a good goalkeeper and they'll save our butt back there. We'll get a couple good defenders, but they don't teach like when you were at Rutgers, and how we got you guys in defense to be so solid. I was so impressed with that. You guys are family. I mean, you would go through walls for each other. That is non-existent. They're friends. They don't want to verbalize maybe what might be in their mind because they don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and that kind of thing. And to me, if you're trying to reach a different level, you got to be able to stand up for yourself. You got to be able to hold others accountable around you. And that's one of the things I loved about Rutgers. And you were one of the best at it, Lex. I mean, you would turn around and you give somebody your mind if you saw something that needed to be said. And I respect that 100%. But to me, I don't know, Don or Eric and Bob, even with your level, I know, but you coach differently. I mean, you get it done. I don't see it. And that, to me, that's an unfortunate for the development of the position and also the philosophy of the whole defensive unit. Does that make sense?
Let me expand on that a little bit. So in the development of the players at the youth level that obviously lead into the college pros and up to the national team, with ODP, MLS Next, ECNL, when I do game analysis for these players, whether it's at the South region or whether it's at youth national teams, or even within the clubs at any level, the goalkeepers have no idea on what a basic shape should look like, whether they're playing a 4-4-2, 3-4-3, whatever they're playing. And so when you ask them these very basic questions, number one, there's nothing about defense being covered with their teams or with the states or the region. There's not one training session about it. I'm basically it as the goalkeeper coach with the states that I work with and with the region. And when I'm talking to them, it's essentially like I'm speaking a foreign language. They don't even understand what pressure cover balance is. And I believe that it is hindering our ability, especially at the youth level, moving on up, to compete at the higher levels, to prepare teams to go or players to go into college, to play at the higher levels, because that's where they're first really getting introduced to. So I think that's what Blodge is alluding to, is that the youth levels and leading on up, it's just not there. The development is on the attack part. I have yet to see in 10 plus years a defensive session run at the ODP level and also MLS Next, now that it's coming in, and ECNL, that has anything to do with how the goalkeeper and the defense work as a unit, and then into the whole 11v11 group. So is that where I was going, Blodge?
Yeah, it's good. Thanks, man. Glad you had my back, Don.
Well, I think you're touching on a number of very, very broad issues. It's the problem with our development of our young players, the pay for play, all the stuff that everybody who's in the game, who understands the game really, really suffers from. And, look, it's even with the 21st century athlete, as we were talking before, look, coaching's coaching. People are people. I'm not going to say the 20th century athlete was better than the 21st century athlete. I think the problem is nowadays is a little bit of information overload. Everybody, they're always on social media, and they're getting so much information, and where's the truth lie? And it's coaches too. I know I talked to, we all know Peter Vermees, and he played for us and all that. And Peter calls them, basically laptop coaches. They're on the internet, they're looking at this exercise and looking at this exercise. They don't really realize, okay, you got an exercise, but you got a coach inside the exercise. The exercise isn't the end all, the be all. But, the relationships nowadays, unfortunately, you look at the highest level of, let's call college basketball, it's transactional. It's becoming collegiate ball is becoming more and more like professional ball, where I'm making this much money here. I got no allegiance there. I'm going to go here. So there's a multitude of issues. I still believe, though, that the basics that makes a competitive human being is still there. I got guys that are just as competitive as, well, maybe not as much as Lexi, because he was a bit of an anomaly. But I have guys that are really competitive. I think part of it comes with our coaches' education. Look, we, we were going through our A licenses and all that kind of stuff. We had to prove he could play. I mean, look, we had Walt Chiswick. Walt Chiswick was running our bloody our stuff. Joe Matchnick was running the goalkeepers. They kind of taught a whole generation, Bobby Gansler and all them, what the right way to teach and to make groups come together and how important every aspect of the game was. I don't know if we have that anymore. When there's so many issues to be unpacked when you talk about youth football in this country, or youth soccer in this country. But, look, it still comes down to, from our perspective in this conversation, about working on the synergy between a whole team and not compartmentalizing a team. Your defending starts from the top. Everybody's got to be involved. You got to build a block. You should be building a 30 by 30 yard block. Everybody's working together. The keeper's off his line. He's running the whole show. So, it's about incorporating a whole team and not, separating it. And I think sometimes in youth ball, let's face it, a lot of the youth academies are more worried about what they win and than they are in development. It's the first time in my life, guys, that, because I'm working at where Combat Academy is kind of like an IMG, only half the price. So I have kids from 18 different countries, all different educational backgrounds, but no matter where they come from, they're still human beings. But right now it's different. It's different, but you still have to do the same things you always did. You have to teach, you have to educate, you have to get people to buy in. And it's connectivity. It's connectivity. So
I feel the education component, Bob, that you're discussing doesn't exist right now with players. Like, I think we expect players to know things, goalkeeping in particular. Something as simple as setting up a wall and the team roles. Everyone has a role when it comes to setting up a wall. Coach, I rarely do we see that even trained or in a team setting. And then the head coach is looking at the goalkeeper coach saying, hey, I thought you were going to do this. Goalkeeper coach looks at the head coach. Well, I need the field players to be a part of this because they need to understand their roles, because everyone's either listening and moving or they are part of the leadership of what's taking place. And then you just see basic hiccups. Like, to me, that's an easy thing to do. Set up a wall and get it done in 8 seconds, but it needs to be trained. And so, Bob, my question then gets back to the head coach. What should their understanding of the goalkeeper position be when it comes to their responsibilities and, like, say, the 4 moments of the game? Like, what should we expect out of the head coaches?
Well, first of all, they got to give the freedom to the goalkeeper coach, and they have to have them involved in everything. And then look, and Alexi and Blodge will attest to this. And, we organized everything. We didn't just say, okay, get in the wall, guys. We went by position. Everybody knew exactly what the role is. And if you went in for somebody, if somebody went in for Chris Beach or somebody, you played his role and you knew his role. But, it's you really have to trust and demand. I think that's what it comes from, But you really can't. It's hard for me right now to talk about youth football or youth soccer, because it's such a hodgepodge. Every year, there's different names and they're changing the league, and this MLS next, ECNL. It's all garbage. We were developing better players, and I don't mean the numbers, because we're not developing. Now we're developing very, very technical players, but they're kind of like cookie cutter players. They all play possession in every exercise. That's all they do. But when Lex and Peter Vermees and Tony Miola and Tab Ramos and those guys were growing up, they were being raised by old Hungarians, old Scots, old English guys. When they learned how to Manny Shellshide, they learned how to read the game. They learned how to understand the game. Now, in those days, they played on different clubs and all kicked each other. Nowadays, you look at club football, they all be on one or two clubs and beating everybody by 6 or 7-0. So I think, look, I'm sure you all would agree. I think we should just blow up the whole system. I think we just blow up the whole system and start from scratch and try and build a model where you can actually develop players. Now, look, let's face it. The pro clubs are doing it. They have a different vested interest in it because they want to develop, sell, make money, win. But the youth football in the country right now, for me, is a mess. And I don't know if there's any one way to solve it. So
I'm curious.
That's a conundrum.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let's continue with the development at the club level. What do you feel the goalkeeper coach's role should be within an academy?
Well, for me, I think the next to whoever's running the team, you have your head coaches, you have your guys who's directing the academy, but your goalkeeper coach should be almost like the assistant director of the academy.
Now, to that, I'm just talking about from what I see here in my general area. It's one person who's the director of goalkeeping in the club. Maybe they have another person with them, and they run their sessions down there by themselves, and then they're dismissed and they go back to their team, and the goalkeeper coach stays down there and waits for another group of goalkeepers to come in, and then he runs a training session. But there's no education. Like there's no, like, I agree with you, by the way. The goalkeeper coach needs to be a part of the staff at the academy level. A goalkeeper coach needs to be in the goal, coaching the goalkeepers at a 12-year-old and having them understand the positioning, the communication, the leadership, similar to what Blige was doing, it sounds like, at Rutgers with you guys. But that doesn't take place. And I complain about a cost versus development model. The decision of the people who are now running the clubs are making a decision that costs too much. So we're just.
I think that's your major problem, though. I think it's your major problem because really, by rights, if Vlad's whatever academy he's working at, I mean, he should have a staff of, depending on how many teams you have, 4 or 5 goalkeeper coaches under him. And they may all get together early on, but then they break off. And again, if I was running it, they would break off and they would go with all the teams and they would be integrated in the coaching process all the way through. Mm-hmm. But this is not youth football nowadays it's like when they go to these super tournaments and they're going to be seen by all these college coaches. I used to go to them the first day and say, I'm out of here the second day. These kids are exhausted by the second game they play. It's all money making in this country. And it's not the way to be it. I think that also comes down to your decisions how many goalkeeper coaches you can hire. But this is a vast problem, guys. This is in youth football in America.
Alexi, let me ask you a question. You see it at the highest levels, and how do you see the players coming up as complete players, or what do they need when they come? Are they being the players that reach the level where you see a lot? I would think, right? Because you don't really see much of a youth game, or do you?
No, I don't see a whole lot of it. No, I mean, by the way, if there's one thing that we have done over the years on the men's side is develop goalkeepers. Let's be honest. And yet, I mean, we're going into our second World Cup right now, where goalkeeping is still a question mark. I mean, you go back in history when it comes to the national team at World Cups. Goalkeeping, all right. We knew who they were. Sometimes we had multiple goalkeepers that were, arguably world class, but certainly you could argue that. And now, we're going into with another World Cup with an unproven goalkeeper in Matt Freese, and I hope he steps up to the occasion. But it's interesting how maybe we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. At the very least, we were producing good goalkeepers. As far as the quality, to Bob's point, I think the quality was there, and I think there are certainly more opportunities and pathways and resources than ever before. But I will say, part of the problem, and Bob alluded to a little bit there, is that we are such a big country. We have all of these different cultures. We have all these different ways of thinking about the game. If I ask you guys what good soccer is or beautiful soccer is, I'm going to get different answers. If I ask 100 people in soccer what beautiful soccer is, I'm going to get 100 different answers. And it can be based on your history, your ethnicity, geography, where you play, weather, a million different things. So from a national team perspective, trying to get 11 people on the field to represent these 350 million, that with all of this diversity, as opposed to other countries and cultures that have kind of accepted this is who we are, this is how we play. And I know it's being a little simplistic, but this is the challenge that we have from a national team perspective. I look at some of the players, and I can't remember, was it you, Bob, that mentioned that the cookie cutter type of thing. There was a time not so long ago where we recognized, we don't have the skills and the technique, and so we focused. And any player at a young age that showed any type of individual flair and the ability to dribble was immediately given opportunities and pathways. I'm not saying that was wrong, but we produced this generation of kind of tweeners. We don't really know what position that they play, but they got the ball, and they also at times, while they were good skill-wise, they lacked some of the grit. And so again, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I think we really have to be cognizant and aware and guard against doing that, because it's not all bad, but there certainly have to be changes. And if we can take the good that we have and augment that, then maybe we're cooking. But no matter what, we are always going to be uniquely American. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does provide challenges that oftentimes other countries around the world don't have.
You know, you hit on a point there, Lex. We had Tim Mulqueen on
Just
last week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
As soon as you hear his name, you start smiling, don't you?
Waiting for some stories. We want to hear stories. But Mulch was saying, because he did a clinic for Dean Koski in Bethlehem, PA, and I hadn't seen Mulch in probably 12 years, and knowing that it was there, it's close to where I live, I went and saw him. And the last thing he said, he put on a great session. The last thing he said, okay, after Tim Howard, he said he reached out to the crowd and he said, after Tim Howard, who we got coming in goal next? And everybody just went, I don't know. And it's still that way, you know. And so something got changed in there somewhere. And so I asked Mulch, what do you look for? You know, it's because he's at St. Joe's now. And I said, what do you look for in a goalkeeper? He says, well, first of all, obvious things of athleticism. You got to be an athlete. But he says, technique. Can you catch the bloody ball? You know, I mean, can you play with your feet? And he just kept saying, you know, number one thing is keep the damn ball out of the net. But he said, I'd rather have a goalkeeper that keeps the ball out of the net than being able to hit a 5-yard pass to your center back, you know. But he said technique. And, you know, I built my teaching career on that, on technique. You know, I've always tried to get my goalkeepers to master the different necessary techniques that you need and skills that you need to advance in a position. And I finally figured out a way of doing it, and it works. But what has happened, and Alexi, you hit right on it, man. It's like we're so big, we have so many different cultures that these kids will get with a South American goalkeeper coach, then they'll get with a European goalkeeper coach, then they'll get with an American goalkeeper coach, and you know, you're trying so hard to see these kids on a weekly basis, if you can, at the best. Try to get these kids come to something you're doing once a week. Sometimes you only see them a couple times during each season. Then they go back to either their school, their club teams that are being taught completely something else, and then they come back and it's like you got to rehash the thing all over again. So, you know, Alexi, you hit it, man. The culture's tough. I mean, it's good, but we don't have a direction. Like Bob was saying, we don't have a direction. We're all over the damn place. And it's difficult for us as goalkeeper coaches to try and develop the next generation and get the people up to maybe what our goalkeeping culture and history used to be. But these are types of things that we're battling, you know?
Lodge, I can even extend a little bit on this. Like we mentioned that, Lex, you mentioned this, you know, the goalkeepers, Mayola, Howard, Friedel, Fior, Keller. I mean, I know I'm missing something in there, but that's a dang good group. But I can also tell you the coaches that were with him, Peter Muller, Mulqueen, right? And Phil Wedden. And now we have a question mark with our goalkeepers at that level. But I also have a question. Jack Robinson just got hired. Like, what's happening in the U.S. from like that goalkeeper coaching position? And I just don't see anyone there taking that leadership role. And I don't know if that's a connection or not, but the coaches back then were dynamic. And so were our goalkeepers, producing them putting them in great teams globally. I don't believe we have that education now, or that goalkeeper coach with that staff to develop these guys to get them to those levels.
Yeah, but you know, there's also a part of me that says, you know, we're looking through this lens of being in the game for many, many years. So I know I guarantee you guys have watched a game, and you know the goalkeeper's playing out of the back, and he's doing something that back in the day they would have been cut on site. Like, that's it. and that would have been the least of his worries, because the rest of his team would be like, what the hell are you doing in this moment? Or, you know, at times where just save the ball. You know, the fundamental priority for a goalkeeper is to save the ball. While I would like a goalkeeper, you know, to be able to play with the ball, if I'm only going to take one, I'm going to take the ability to save the ball, and I'll deal with the distribution and all of that. So again, but there's a whole generation now that doesn't seem to see any problem with it. So are we being antiquated in our view? Because if they see that same play, they'll say, but yeah, we see what they were trying to do. And there's maybe a crazy romantic notion that has been instilled in this game. I don't find it as beautiful, as romantic as people make it out to be. But that doesn't mean that this generation doesn't see it like that. And when they watch their soccer games, they might just incorporate that into the experience. And therefore, the players that are playing like that, it's nothing new, it's nothing different, even if they're risking, even if they're doing things that blow my mind right now in terms of the risk reward, especially from a defensive standpoint. Bob used to not just teach us what to do physically, but he used to teach us to think about the game and that risk reward, especially from a defensive perspective, and living to fight another day. And yeah, you can dive in here, but guess what? There's nobody behind you, and then we're really screwed. And it's different if you're a midfielder or something like that. Or Bob was actually the first coach that ever made me think of, it's not just enough to get to the ball. It's, can you win the ball? Yeah, I know you can crush legs and you can tackle really, really hard, but can you also win the ball in that moment and maintain possession? I know you can jump in the air and out jump people and hit it 30 yards down the field, but can you actually head with directional purpose when you're doing those types of things? And all of that is stuff that I learned a long time ago, and I think that's stuff that still applies today. But there is absolutely some stuff that doesn't apply today. That doesn't make it right or wrong. It just makes it different. And those of us that have been around, either we adapt or we got problems.
Lexi, what was your relationship like with your goalkeepers back then?
So I was when I was a freshman, they were, and there's a hierarchy even within a team, especially relative to class. And so I was not only a freshman, but I was from Michigan, and there was like not a suspicious nature to me, but everyone was trying to suss out who I was, red hair and all that kind of stuff. And so I was. Bob also saw around the corner and saw things that other people didn't, in that he had faith in me playing defense, which is something that I had never done. And I may have lied a little along the way.
He did lie.
And said, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Hey, listen, one thing I did learn about New Jersey, fake it till you make it, baby. All right. You got to hustle. And so, yeah, of course I played defense. And yeah, you figure it out as you go along. And we were going through a transition here, but he introduced me to something that has been, now the love of my life, and certainly has gotten me to where I am. And I learned, all of these different things from Bob in that moment. So it seems like a long time ago, but it's really not that long ago. But the game, as we said, has changed dramatically. But I think the communication, the understanding comes from a respect. Obviously, it comes from reps, just like anything else, and it comes from trust. You believe that this person, like I said, is going to make that save. Goalkeepers will tell you, and this is something I had to learn on the way, is that sometimes as a defender, you will try to do things and you will actually make the situation worse by what you feel is going above and beyond. One of the worst things that you can do from a goalkeeper perspective is make that last second dive or tackle or something like that. And in doing so, blind him or her, or make it that much more difficult. Or obviously, the deflections, how many times do we see where it's deflected and the defender will say, I was almost there and I had that tackle. But goalkeepers will say, I'm here for a reason. And if you do take the time to talk to goalkeepers, I know it's difficult, but if you do take the time, they every once in a while make sense. And in this case, they would make sense in that, what? I'm here to make that. I mean, we watch these goalkeepers take 100 shots to this far post where they're parrying it out and doing all this kind of stuff. So in that moment, you may just want to take a beat and recognize, is this the best course of action? Or like a lot of things in life, somebody is put in a position to do a job. So let this person do their job, because obviously they're good at it or they wouldn't be there.
Yeah,
so you never answered the question. What was your relationship like with your
goalkeepers you played with?
It was good. I had some crazy goalkeeper. I mean, that's redundant, right? I mean, that's
what I wanted. That's exactly where I want to go in this.
So, Bob mentioned, Dave Beretta, who was an absolute wonderful guy, one of my dear friends, but an absolute nutcase, both on and off the field, to be quite honest with you. And then, not the complete opposite in terms of nutcase, because he was equally not just in a different way, was Bill Andracki. And they couldn't have approached their life or their job more differently. But ultimately, they're there to make the saves. And I will say this, I lived in houses with them. And I went out with them. And, you know, I'll tell you a story. Dave Beretta, you know, they took me under their wing oftentimes, a lot of these older guys, especially when I was first starting. And we would go out and we would go out to the bars and whatever and stuff like that. And inevitably, somebody would look at David or me or something like that in a way that he didn't like, you know? I couldn't see it, but evidently it did not sit well with him. And inevitably, he would do something that would get us kicked out of the bar. Now, the way he would tell it, it was like, I was standing up for you and I was protecting you and doing all these things. So that is a long way of saying that they are near and dear to my heart, and they are still to this day some of my great friends. Not just for the protection that they gave on the field for me, but also for the way that they stood up for me off the field in various different circumstances.
Team bonding. Team
Yeah.
bonding right there.
That was very well
Blige,
said.
We will be back after this message from our sponsors.
Goalkeepers, what does your goalkeeping development roadmap look like? Are you focusing on all 5 elements of development of a goalkeeper? Those 5 elements are your technical abilities, your tactical understanding of the game, your physical growth, your psychological balance, and your leadership skills. If you answered no to any of those elements of development, you are not fully developing yourself as a goalkeeper. Here at the United Goalkeeping Alliance, we focus on developing goalkeepers through education of goalkeeping specific moments in the game, all while featuring the 5 elements of a goalkeeper's development. For $199 for the year, yes, the cost of 2 one-hour private training sessions, you will have the opportunity to participate in weekly live educational sessions on goalkeeping specific topics. You can also take advantage of our library of over 250 hours of recorded goalkeeping educational content. You have the opportunity to participate in goalkeeping specific mentorships. You'll have an immediate connection to college goalkeeper coaches. You'll also have the opportunity to have 24/7 online support. You'll also receive discounts for gloves, equipment, camps, and clinics. So goalkeepers, if you'd like to learn more on how the United Goalkeeping Alliance can support you with your goalkeeping developmental roadmap, please contact us at the information above. I'm Eric Eisenhut of the United Goalkeeping Alliance. Now back to our podcast.
And now back to our episode.
Blige, how'd you deal with such different personalities?
Oh,
and
yeah,
goals,
yeah,
such
yeah.
a
I,
high-quality team?
I just let them go.
What do you mean by that?
I just let them be who they are.
Good.
Of course, I was a little wacky myself, so it kind of all worked. I don't know. You know what? To me, it was like I love goalkeeper personalities. I mean, I find them interesting, fun, challenging. Okay, I can remember when we had Dave Yeager, who was a blue collar type of goalkeeper, and you could tell Dave run through the wall. Boom, he'd run through the wall and come back. How do you do, coach? You want me to do it again? And then we brought in Joe DeMorat. Joe DeMorat was like probably one of the purest athletes I've ever worked with. He was phenomenal. Corey Hunter was another one, but Joe was just smooth and explosive and fearless. And so we were doing and I started training Joe in the first 3 days of preseason camp when I got the keepers. I worked Joe exactly the same way I was working Dave. And Joe didn't like it. And I remember Bob and he came in the office with Bob and me, and he started crying. He said, I can't do this. I don't like it. I don't like it here. He almost went to Army. We got him from Army. And so I think he was thinking he wanted to get out and go somewhere else. So that threw a light off in my head. It said, okay. That was my first big lesson of you gotta coach the individual, not the position. And all Joe wanted to do was we had the jugs machine, put it at 100 miles an hour, top of the 18, whipping all types of balls at him until he caught 20 in a row. I'm ready, coach. And then he was just phenomenal. I mean, the game against Penn State, what he did against Penn State is legendary. And but I learned, okay, he's got one thing going on, Dave's got another. You gotta adjust to that. So that was a big lesson for me, and that I carried that forward into working with, we had to stop Dave from hitting his head against a goalpost, if I remember. Okay, he would headbutt the goalpost sometimes. He'd get so ticked off.
Regularly.
Yeah, allegedly, and regularly. But he was intense, So I think my gift, because I was never taught to be a goalkeeper coach. I was never taught the goalkeeper position. I just learned it on my own. And Bob gave me that loose rope to go ahead and give it a go. So I made mistakes, but my strength was I'm kind of a spiritual guy, and I got them mentally to where they needed to be. If they were being going off on a tangent, I would support it. If they stayed going the other way, I would support it. I just wanted them. I didn't want to battle them because I saw when they were getting on the edge a little bit that they needed a shoulder. They didn't need to have somebody push them. So that's kind of how it worked for me, and it was a great education for me. I loved my goalkeepers. They taught me so much, and they taught me a lot about my life to help me get through. Because when Bob will test of this, I'm ADHD, and I was terrible in the office for Bob because I couldn't concentrate half the time. So, and and we talk about it now, but I messed Bob up a lot because I couldn't. He gave me tasks to get done. I couldn't get them done because I was off somewhere. So my goalkeeper centered me a lot, and it taught me a lot. I just spoke from my heart. I was always very honest, and I think, and then that's why it hurt, why it worked. So, yeah, Lexi, you hit it. You were around two great ones, man. Two interesting ones. Who was the first goalkeeper when you got there? Who
Conway.
was before Beretta?
Oh God, I don't even
No,
know.
Conway came later. Conway came later.
Conway was yeah, he was later.
I got a
Yeah, he
question
came
for
later.
you, Ross, about Conway.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if now's the time, but I have a question for you about John.
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I just trying to think was go ahead, Don.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
All right, I'll butt in. I'll get in.
I got a
Bob.
question.
No,
Very
you
serious
always-
question.
Go ahead, Don.
Alexi, you're from Michigan.
Yes.
Go blue
Uh-oh.
or go Sparty?
Uh-oh.
Oh, well, so the one of the reasons why, one of the whole reasons why I went to Rutgers, okay, was because at the time, if you can believe it, University of Michigan did not have a varsity soccer program. I didn't even consider, I didn't know anything. I have no affiliation with either of them. So my answer is neither of them. I didn't grow up watching them. I know. My wife's a big Buckeye fan, and so now it's all Ohio State. I know, it's brutal.
Boy.
It's brutal from a Michigan perspective, but it is. I mean, it just shows you how far we've come. Where Michigan just didn't even have a program at that time, and I was getting rejected at pretty much every place that I applied, and my dad was getting. I was getting desperate, but my dad was getting desperate too, and he called up Bob, and Bob was nice enough to meet me, and we drove out the whatever it is 9-10 hours from Detroit, and we met with Bob for like 4 hours or so, and he took me around and showed me everything and said, hey, we'd love to invite you to preseason and we can get you into the agriculture school. And again, I grew up in Michigan. I did not grow up on a farm. But again, like I had nothing. And I had never been to Rutgers, never been to New Jersey. But it was a place. And from a soccer perspective, the only reason I knew about Rutgers, by the way, is because there used to be a magazine, I'm sure you know, Soccer America, and it was the Bible for soccer out there. And I would go down to George's Soccer Supply, and I would find the latest edition of it. And you mentioned Peter Vermes, who was a legend from a Rutgers perspective. And I remember reading an article about Peter Vermes, and that he went to this place called Rutgers. And so I had sent away for an application, and it was on the bottom of my applications, and it wasn't really going to be anything. But from a soccer perspective, it was far and away the best program. And as Bob will attest to, they were going through kind of a rebuilding year, and so they were, looking for some different things. And so positionally, it worked out where I was able to come in and do some different things. But look, the soccer gods work in mysterious and strange ways, and they smiled upon me in that moment, and like I said, changed my life forever because of that opportunity.
Oh, what is it with our family members marrying Buckeyes? And my daughter is her now husband, and he had a big Ohio State O on his shoulder, and I just looked at her and went, "Really?"
Crazy. It's crazy.
So anyway, I thought that was of utmost importance, if only to me.
Bob, I have a question for you though. And we had two people I'm gonna go back to that we had already on. One was Anson, and the other was Johnny Conway. And Anson talks about during the season they would split time with goalkeepers, and basically they were playing for who would play in the tournament. Like that was his way of justifying and keeping the competition high throughout the season. I believe you guys, I wouldn't say you kind of split some time where you guys would have different goalkeepers in during the season. But Johnny Conway tells me a story, and Blige completely sold you under the bus, man. Just threw you under the bus.
He's allowed to. I've been
He
thrown
came
before.
to the Big East semifinal, and Conway comes in with like just a couple minutes left in overtime, I believe, right before the shootout, and does very well in the shootout and gets you to the final. And then in the final, and this might have been the national championship, actually, Blige. Correct me if I have my tournaments wrong.
Yeah, I think it was Big East, wasn't it?
It was Big East. And then Conway gets the call for the final. And I was like, hold on a second. So you only played the last minute and the shootout of the semifinal, and then you got the start in the final. I looked right at Conway. I'm like, if I had been that other goalie, I would have been livid. And I would have went right to Blige and Reasso and been like, what the beep is going on? I go, Blige, what happened here? He goes, Riasso's decision. I didn't have a clue. I didn't have any. So even though this is a joke and it's a funny story, how often did you inquire with Blige about time, how goalkeepers should be playing and when they should be playing and all that?
Well, all the time. First of all, we always talked about it. But, it was an interesting situation. Steve Widdowson was our goalkeeper at the time. And Steve had taken us to a Final Four. He's a great coach at Millersville now. He's a fabulous guy. But, John was, first of all, John's 6'6". What was Steve? 6'1"? John 6'6". And John was phenomenal at saving penalty kicks. I mean, not good, phenomenal at saving penalty kicks. And the game, it was tied. I was going to go to PKs. And I turned around to Blige. I said, Blige, I think we got to make the move. I think we have to make this move. And, he could argue and told me to go to hell, but, he said, okay, let's go. He believed in because I was in more of a gut feeling than anything else. And so we put John on because you can't just throw him in for the PKs. We need to get a little bit of feel. So we put him on at the end of the game. And when Widow came off, we explained it to him, and we had long conversations with him. But then John goes in there, and was it St. John's or who did we beat that night?
I think it might have been.
And John, I think, saved 3 penalties. And let's face it, John potentially, and he wound up having a 10-year MLS career. He actually, when Blige and I went over and studied with Roy Hodgson over at Blackburn Rovers, that next summer, we sent John Conway and Brian Peason to train with Blackburn Rovers. And then Roy tried to sign him later on at a couple of clubs he was at. John was a phenomenal goalkeeper. So, it comes down to competition. We took that gut feeling and we put him in, and John, of course, saved us. And then, when we looked to make the next game, we went with John. And then, Steve, to his credit, was a man. He was a competitor, took it well, and John took off and had not a good career, a phenomenal career for us.
So when we talked about the start and the final, and I introduced Blige to my displeasure of what was happening, Blige sold you out so fast.
Oh,
that's okay. That's okay. He's allowed to, though. He saved me so many times. He can sell me out every once in a while.
I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that one.
No. If I told you all the stories off the field, you know how much he really saved me.
But
goalkeeper's psyche. I never believed, though. I never believed, and Blige never believed in splitting goalkeepers.
Why?
Well, because I think you destroy him. It's a tough enough position to begin with. Now, in preseason, we may do, but once you win the job, you can't look over your shoulder and say, God, I make one mistake and this guy's coming in and taking my job. And I guess Anson, that's why Anson kept it competitive amongst the women. But you battled it out, you won the job, it was your job. And we also always told ourselves, look, we can't take him out when he makes the first mistake. We're going to ride that horse for a while because we're going to kill him if we do. And we wouldn't do that. So we didn't go through splitting, but that was a totally different situation because it was Steve wasn't very good at saving penalties. Steve was a great goalkeeper, took us to the Final Four, but John was phenomenal. So we made a decision then, and it worked. And I'll tell you, let's juxtapose to now. How about what the Chelsea coach did to I can't remember the goalkeeper's name. The keeper that he had a horrible game. And because he slipped twice. And 22 minutes into the game.
Just recently.
Just in the last week, he takes him out of the game.
That Chelsea?
Yeah. That's bullshit. That bullshit. You had to stay with that keeper. You could never have taken that guy out. Matter of fact, I might have started in the next game too. because that guy may never come back from that. But
You know,
the situation was totally different in that situation.
Well,
I listened to Tim Howard afterwards.
Yeah.
He was talking about that, and Tim said, if I were a second goalkeeper, I wouldn't have gone in. I said, I can't. I said that you just destroyed somebody.
Yeah.
You know, what are you going to do to me? You know, but who knows? But yeah, it's the fragility of goalkeeper confidence. I had a girl that was very good, one of the top goalkeepers in New Jersey, went up to the region, and the goalkeeper coaches at the region had something against Jersey because we were so successful. We had like Heather Riley coming out. We had all these big names coming out to the ODP program and going on. So they told her, says, "You're not good enough. What are you doing here? You know, you shouldn't even be here." And she crashed. And she was a senior and she was going to LSU to find out next year. So it took me, what they did in a matter of 2 days, it took me 6 months to build her back up, her confidence back up. So she went down to LSU, but then Katrina hit and destroyed her, LSU. So she had to go to Texas somewhere for a year or two until they recovered. So she had a rough go at it. But, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can tear down somebody in a position. You can talk to them. You can make them understand the mistakes. But you got to be careful. You can't. I don't like destroying human beings' soul. You know what I mean? There's something inherently wrong with that. So, Lex, I had a question for you. Playing at the different levels that you played at, what was it like getting a relationship with the goalkeeper, like when you went over to Serie A, even at the national team, when you're playing MLS and all that kind of stuff? What was it like getting a relationship developed with a goalkeeper? Was it difficult? Was it easy to do, and all that kind of stuff? I'm kind of interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that has a career, especially one, where you're moving around to different places, you're going to have to very, very quickly get up to speed with what the team is doing, but obviously what your goalkeeper can and cannot do, like anything else, strengths and weaknesses. And then you add a component when it comes to the international game, or just playing internationally, of a different language and everything. And you figure it out. And everyone says, "Oh, it's the language of soccer." And okay, yeah, there is a little bit of that. But especially when you are in my case, the American, oftentimes you're going to have to be able to adjust. And so you need to know what the directives are and the commands are that are coming from behind you so that you can react. And, that means translation or just literally sitting down with different people. You guys were talking about platooning goalkeepers, and I've been in that situation a bunch of different times. Not only is it bad for the goalkeepers, but it's bad for the back line. There is a fundamental difference in every goalkeeper in the way, even great goalkeepers, and even if they are competing for the same position and on quote unquote the same level, things just change with a different person behind you. Better or worse, I don't know. It depends on who you are. But it would, even when I was with the Galaxy for a little bit, back then we had Kevin Hartman, great goalkeeper, Matt Reese, great goalkeeper, and Ziggy Schmidt was our coach. And it was, I could tell, even for a guy like Ziggy Schmidt, who had kind of been around and seen a lot, that it was a difficult thing for him to navigate because they were both so good. But you have to make those different choices. And then when you do that, you have to give autonomy and you have to give, I guess, grace, if you will, to the goalkeeper that you choose in that moment. Because if he or she is standing there and recognizes or thinks that first mistake, I'm screwed, that's a problem. It's a problem for the goalkeeper. It's also a problem for your team. But you are also a coach that you want to instill a competitive nature out there. And if and when you need to make a choice because it's not going for whatever number of reasons, you got to be able to do that. So it's not easy. I would say this, maybe this is, you guys are coaches, so you would know better. In a strange way, you might rather have more of a difference between the goalkeepers from a team perspective. I know you risk injury and all that kind of stuff, and I know, as Bob said, players make the situation and make the coaches oftentimes, but that dynamic is really, really difficult. But that's a long way of saying, yeah, you got to communicate with the people behind you, whether it's in a completely different language, but it is constantly changing. And you could come from one team where everything was clicking, and this, you knew what was going on, and you got traded or whatever, you showed up at another team, and it's just you might be playing the exact same system that the other team was playing, and it doesn't have the same feel because of the words that are used or the positions that are taken by the goalkeeper, all of those different things. And so, like a lot of things, it's no surprise when we talk about, the great Italian teams from a defensive, we talked a lot about defense, about, how they all came kind of from the same, oftentimes AC Milan, and there was an understanding that is built up day after day after day. And from a national team perspective, we all know that's the biggest difficulty and the biggest challenge is you don't have a lot. So it's not surprising to me that oftentimes the defenders and the back line and the goalkeeper are oftentimes coming from the same place because they have that knowledge.
Another question, but that's good. Another question, Lex, is that was there different terminology? Like say when you went from a different MLS experiences or into the National League, national team experience, was there different language that each goalkeeper would use that the backs had to get used to, or was there a consistency there somewhere?
Yeah, sometimes also you're playing in front of big crowds and the noise and you're running around. So your efficiency and your brevity, to be quite honest with you, is crucial. And you gotta, it's funny because we're talking about something that has nothing to do with your physical ability, except we're talking about your voice. And so the words that you choose matter, when you use those words, and even the way in which you project those words matter. Because you have to get something across, oftentimes in milliseconds, to somebody about, hey, there's a guy on your shoulder, or, back up, or, pull in, or whatever, or mine. I mean, even if it's mine, I got it. I got it. All those different things. So it wasn't like jargon that I had to learn or anything like that. It was much more about kind of in all this craziness that's going on to be able to pick out that, I guess it would be a frequency of that person's voice and understand that that's going to help me. All the other stuff isn't going to help me, but that's going to help me because that's going to at least make me have a more informed decision when I decide to do something.
I love what you said just right there about the frequency, because what a lot of kids do, coaches are yelling, we can't hear you, you're not communicating, you're not talking. So these kids, they stay at the top of the 18 when the team is, we're in an attack. So your backs are up at the midfield line. So the kids are back there yelling away at a certain pitch. And then when the team comes back into the defense, now they're using the same pitch. And I'm saying it's like crying wolf after a while. They don't know what you're saying.
Yep.
They just hear noise, So the voice inflection, of course, we didn't have to deal with the crowds, but the voice inflection, that's why we try to encourage them to play up a little closer so you can talk a little bit, or not as loud. Let's put it that way. And then when you back up, that's when you start barking,
Yeah, but it's like a coach too, though, right? You at some point it just becomes noise.
Yeah.
So you have to pick and choose your moments and pick and choose the words that you choose to say in those moments. And if you're just constantly yelling at a player or constantly, now you don't have to be yelling, but if you're constantly chirping about something, it just becomes that white noise. And unfortunately for you and for your team, you'll tune out. And so I want it to cut through, and I want it to be an alert, an alarm. Not alarmist, but an alarm. And hey, this is important. This is an important message for you to get in this moment.
How long did it take you to develop the relationship with the other backs?
Yeah, I mean, so I think you pretty much suss it out pretty quickly about what they can and what they can't do, the speed. If I have to overcompensate because he maybe isn't as fast as somebody else, or if I can actually deal with some other fires over here because I know that speed of that person over there is going to be able to deal with the stuff that's going on. And you figure that out pretty quickly in terms of what they can and what they can't do. And you have to be able to adjust. And they're doing the same things. I mean, some of it's innate, where just athletes are just able to figure that out. And some of it, like anything, takes time and reps and practice sessions.
Very cool.
Oh, if I can add something to that too, if you don't mind, look,
yeah, of course.
I think Alexi made a really good point about really succinct conversation or succinct dialogue. When I'm coaching now, I don't say as much as I used to when I was younger, of course, but when you say it, it has to be very, very definitive, and it can't be constant. And when I'm training my younger coaches, they want to have conversations with guys on the field. You can't have a conversation with them. That's on the field. You got to give them succinct information. And it's the same thing with goalkeepers. I hate it when goalkeepers side right, side left, stop talking nonsense. Give out real information, and I think communication and the way you communicate, both as a coach and as a player, and particularly as a goalkeeper, is critical. I have goalkeepers that they never shut up. Then I have goalkeepers that don't talk at all. But the happy medium is that you got to give quality information in very short, succinct words, and not just babble. Because, like Lex says, everybody has a tendency to turn somebody that's constantly rambling in your ears, turning them off.
Yeah.
So,
great point. Great point.
Bob, when you were making decisions, everything that Lexi was just talking about, how it can impact the field players as well. You ever inquire with the field players about that type of decision regarding your goalkeepers after talking to, say, Blodge or another goalkeeper coach?
Well, we've always, look, Blodge and I'll say Blodge and I, not just I, and my staff, we've always brought our captains and our leadership into our discussions. We tried never to make serious decisions like that without having conversations. Because, look, your assistant coaches, have a different look and feel for what the players are thinking, because they're quite often they'll open up more to the assistant coaches. The field players have a better idea what's going on in the locker room than anybody else. I mean, your players have a better idea what's going on in the locker room. So, any coach or any person that tries to make decisions on their own, is foolish. You need to seek out guidance and help from as many people as you possibly can. Eventually, you're going to have to make the call. Like Blodge threw me on the bus against Conway. For Conway, look, sorry, I had a gut feeling and I was making that call and I was going to do it. But you need to listen to the input.
The gut, the reaction wasn't around him jumping in for the PK. It was around him starting the next day.
Well, yeah, but the reality is that, John was a better goalkeeper.
Yeah.
John had proven himself, and we stayed loyal to Steve because I didn't want to flip back and forth between goalkeepers. Yeah. But John was a better goalkeeper, and let's face it, it's the same thing with David Beretta, who is a dear friend of mine now and is a great, great guy. Blodge and I had to sit him down and said, sorry, we love you, but, we're going to go in another direction. Your first responsibility to your team is to give them the best opportunity to win. Okay, and if we feel, as we did with Billy Andrecki and David and with John Conway and Steve Woodison, if we feel that they're the better goalkeeper, then we have to make that call. And I don't want to say it takes courage, but you have to have enough belief in your staff and your people. And look, when it came with John Conway, we had talked to our Conway. John Rath was one of our captains at that point, and we had a conversation in advance. What the hell's going to do to the team if we don't start Steve? But you've got to be honest and open, but your objective is always put the best team on the field and give your team the best opportunity to win games. And John was better.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Thank you. Blige, that's all you had to say.
That's all you
had to say.
Hey, listen, I needed
Blige
Mr. Eloquence.
My shrink, by the way. Blige my shrink too. So let's.
Yeah. I needed the eloquence of Bob Reasso to get it straight. So. How's that?
I got to tell you, guys, with your organization, and Blodge and I spent a lot of time at one of the conventions over breakfast and a couple of meals when your organization, how long ago was it, Blodge? 4 or 5 years ago, when the organization was really getting ready to jump and go, and how important it was. And, I don't know if you can get the national team coach now, because, let's face it, those times are just, they're going to get a cup of coffee and they're with the team, and then another coach comes in, they're gone. But to get involved with him involved, and just try and get the pyramid to grow, because you're hitting on all the right things, that you are sometimes an isolated group, but your organization is making majorly progress in cutting into that. And you have talked to Franz Hoke. You haven't talked to Franz Hoke yet.
I have. Yeah, he said he's going to be on. And
Dr.
Joe said as well.
Yeah, those are two iconic figures in our game in goalkeeping. And Blodge and I, in our early years, learned so much. By the way, we went to Barcelona to study 3 times, and our entree was Franz Hoke. And Franz was we had total access. We saw everything, and we talk about a great learning experience. At that time, Louis van Gaal was the manager. Ronald Koeman was the assistant manager. Josie Mourinho was the reserve team coach, and Luis Enrique and Pep Guardiola were in the last couple of years of playing. So talk about a laboratory to learn, but our entree was Franz. Then Franz came to Rutgers and ran a session for coaches, but it wasn't just a goalkeeper session. It was more just always how do we incorporate it? How do we play as a unit? And I
Mhm.
love this line he used now by, Gold, what is he called? Gold person?
Go player.
Go player. Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And he's such an intelligent and articulate man and an iconic figure. So as my friend Blodgett, so
He almost threw me under the bus, but he did.
I would never throw
I
him
know. It's all in fun anyway.
Yeah, it's open.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing Alexi had to learn when he came to Jersey. If a Jersey guy's not taking a piss out of you, they don't like you. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
If they're winding you up, that means they like you. When they stop winding you up, then you got to worry about it.
That's very true.
We will be back after this message from our sponsors.
Goalkeeper coaches, are you spread too thin? Are you coaching small groups? Are you coaching at a club? Are you coaching private sessions? Are you coaching in college? Are you selling equipment? Are you selling gloves? Are you running your own camps? Are you running your own clinics? Simply put, everybody, goalkeeper coaches have a lot going on, and they need at least 4 to 5 resources to make it work as a goalkeeper coach. Here at the United Goalkeeping Alliance, we're here to help all goalkeeper coaches with their development in their goalkeeper coaching careers. For $99 a year, yes, a cup of coffee a month, you will join the United Goalkeeping Alliance as a goalkeeper coach and have the opportunity to collaborate with over 175 goalkeeper coaches worldwide. You'll have an immediate connection into the collegiate game to be able to share your highlight film of your goalkeepers, in addition to the ability to recruit if you are a goalkeeper coach at the collegiate level. You'll have 24/7 online and live support with business ideas, curriculum, and lesson plan support. We will also promote your club, your academy, your equipment, and anything that you do through our social media outlets. Last but not least, and definitely an important variable, all UGKA coaches have the opportunity to earn 50% commissions on all clubs and goalkeepers that they bring in to the United Goalkeeping Alliance. If you'd like to learn more, please reach out to me, proud board member Eric Eisenhut of the United Goalkeeping Alliance, at the contact information above. Thank you for listening, and back to our episode.
And now back to our episode.
Well, Lexi, I was in the same way because, I grew up out on Lake Ontario in a little town called Hilton outside of Rochester. And, went to Hartwick and I got to New England. I met Bob, stayed in New England. The last place we were together was Maine. And then Bob says, come on down, be my assistant coach, goalkeeper coach at Rutgers. And it was culture shock.
Yep.
I came down from driving down main roads where you see a car once every half hour, moving into East Brunswick where everybody was fighting for a parking space and lines and everybody's
Jack
flipping you
Mulder,
off.
by the way, he was living with Jack Mulder.
And I was living with Jack Mulder on top of it.
Oh my God. Enough said.
So it was, and it took me a good 10, 11 months to get used to it because like you're saying, you make a mistake in Jersey, you get it from everywhere because you made a mistake, and then after a while you stop making as many mistakes because you're still going to get slammed. But they will put their arm around you and they will back you and help you and go on the line for you. That's different. So once I got to give Jersey a lot of credit because it changed my character from being kind of like my dad used to say, I was green. Okay. Right. And then now I can stand on my own 2 feet pretty much. My knees are shot. My knees are shot.
It's not mean. It's
no,
just
you're right.
it's stronger. And I was the same way when I came out. I didn't, like I said, I'd never been to New Jersey, never been to Rutgers. I mean, first month I didn't say a word just to kind of because I didn't know what to say. And I at least was smart enough to know maybe I can scare the crap out of these guys. Because again, these guys from New York metropolitan area and a lot of from Jersey. When you said Michigan, it might as well been like the dark side of the moon for them. Okay, so they couldn't even probably point it out on a map. And so I'm showing up there and I'm from Michigan, and I mean, months before I'm running around on, basically a pasture playing soccer. And the next thing you know, I got people up on the stands F-bombing me and screaming and yelling. I was like, where am I right now? But it hardens you in a good way. Yeah, and not just a good way in terms of being a soccer player. I know, one of the things that heartens me, when I hear you guys talk about is youth soccer. And we all know we want to create better soccer players, but what I love is that people like you that I love and that I trust are out there with younger soccer players, men and women, boys and girls, that may or may not go on to be great soccer players. And to be quite honest with me, honest with you guys, I don't care. But they are going to go on to lead what I feel is the greatest country in the world. And we need as many people going out there armed with the tools and the weapons and the ability to deal with this life. And without a doubt, and I'm sure you guys would agree with me, a lot of those tools come in these types of situations. And whether it's communication that we've talked about, whether it's competition that we've talked about, whether it's hardship and ups and downs and success and failure and all those different stuff, whether it's interaction with coaches and dealing with that type of dynamic, interaction with your teammates, with your assistant coaches, all that kind of stuff. And I know you guys know this, but I would like to think that some of your proudest moments are the players that you have produced in terms of what they have gone on to be, not as players, but as young people. And so I guess that's my ode and my thank you to you, because I deal with, the highest level and people are getting paid ridiculous amounts of money. And there is a ruthlessness at that level, but the human element still is there. But the human element is found obviously with the people that, and the kids and the younger people, I guess, that you're dealing with. And so thank you from a gratitude standpoint for our country and what you guys are doing.
Oh, that's very nicely said, Lex. Very nicely said. Go ahead, Don.
No, you go.
I was going to say, it's like when I get together with a group of goalkeepers, I mean, the level of some of the goalkeepers we train is like, it's amazing the different levels within one group. And I tell them basically the same thing, Lexi. I said, I don't care what level you're going to be. If you just want to play club soccer, if you want to be rec soccer, if you want to go on to college, maybe pros, who knows? I don't care. It's about trying to be, I said, my role is to help you try to learn the tools to be the best you possibly can be at whatever level you go to, and then carry that on after you go on into your lives. So, but it's nice to hear you say that, because that's the underlying thing. Be honest with you, that's why I coach. Because that's why I teach. It's because you can make a difference. And I know, but I mean, look at Bob's stable. I mean, Bob, the number of people you have influence in their lives, not only in the game, but successful business people and just good human beings. And one thing I love about Bob, when he got to Rutgers, he went right after the alumni immediately. That was his number one thing. Okay, I'm getting all the old past guys, get them in, bring them into the family. And from there, it exploded. Bob was a master of that. And our Rutgers family, what's that?
No, I'm gonna tell a story about we went back to honor our 94 team. Yeah. At the UCLA game 2 years ago. And, it wasn't only the 94 team there. We had about 75 guys that ever played for us. They're coming with their kids. Who's a doctor, who's a lawyer, who's an engineer. And, and like Rocky's just walking up with 3 kids. I said, Rocky, when were you taking care of kids? You couldn't get out of bed in the morning. What the heck's going on? But, you watch, as Lex and as Blonde has said, I think the most rewarding aspect of being a coach or being an educator is, you watch them grow, you try and help them along the way. Your impact hopefully means something, but to see them grow to be, productive people, raise their own children, and is the greatest gift. Look, nobody's going to remember how many W's and L's you had at the end. People are going to remember how you made them feel when you were with them. And, as long as you're trying to help people in life, you're doing your job. So, and that's why Blodge has always been my kind of like my North Star, because as Lex will tell you, I can get a little crazy and, and intense, but I always use it as a barometer to try and bring me back to reality and make me understand. We also had Bob McNulty, who was near and dear. That's a very, very famous name in the annals of coaching in America. He was a great coach. He actually, unfortunately, passed away from cancer in a span of 2 weeks and broke all our hearts. But Bob was another steadying influence. I love the young coaches now. They don't want any older guys around them. Yeah. Because they're always afraid of the older guy. And the first thing I do when I got to Rutgers is, besides getting blogs, I went and got Bob McNulty. I said, I need somebody older than me who can say, okay, Bob, shut up, sit down, relax a little bit, because you have to learn from each other. That's really what life's all about. So,
yeah. Well, it's so good to hear, people that have made it at your level speak the same way. We need more people in youth sports of all, no matter the sport, that feel that way. And another Jersey boy, you may know Gary Henley. Bob, do you know Gary Henley?
Hell yeah, I know Gary. I know him forever. Christ, I know him forever. It's older than the 80s.
Yeah, he's living
Good
in
man.
St. Marco Island down in Florida. He's one of my best friends. And
Yeah, say hello when you see him. He's a great guy. Great guy, great coach.
I will. He just sort of helped shape me as a young coach, but where I've landed is, the X's and O's of the game are easy. But the relationships, we always say, I can't make every player that comes through a great soccer player, but hopefully I can have some kind of impact that's going to help them be a better human being on the biggest team of all, the human team, right?
Sure.
And that's why I coach, and I love it, and I want to see the direction go into making better people. And I know we have that holistic part of the coach education now and everything, but it's so good to hear people like yourselves and everybody here. I know Blige and Eric feel the same way. It's about those relationships and helping people go on to be just better humans. I love the fact that my players that are now in their 30s have gone on to have successful families and careers. In fact, there's a young lady that's on a plane right now to Portugal that's 15 years old that just made the United States Youth Women's National Team. She's going.
That's awesome.
Bravo.
And I'm so proud of her and what this journey has taught her. Soccer's all part of it, but the biggest part of it is what she's learned. It's going to go on and make her a better person.
It's funny. It's like I actually a couple years ago trained a daughter of Chris Peak. I think he was like number 3 goalkeeper back in the 80s. He was a Jersey boy, but he wasn't that good, but he was in our stable a little bit. I trained his daughter. And I said, well, when I start training grandkids, maybe I don't think about maybe it's time for him to retire. But that's not too far away, by the way.
Hopefully you get there, Blige. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah, good.
Blige, say we're winding down here. If that's the case, I have a surprise.
Oh, all right.
And I've been talking about this, and I have a culprit here who helped me with this. So I'll let you guys figure out who this is. But we're gonna play a little game.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. Lexi, you're a part of this, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So built a little presentation here, and then the game is name the location and name people in the photo. So that said, let's get rolling here. Where are we?
Oof. Jeez. Well, I can see beach. I can see.
I see nothing. I'm not seeing it. Why am I missing this, guys? Oh, there it is. Yeah, I got that now. Yeah.
Yep. There's Blige in the back right there.
Art Brinkman, right?
Yeah.
Timmy
Art,
Mulqueen,
yeah.
Timmy
With some hair.
Mulqueen.
Do you remember when this was taken?
There's Lev. Oh God, no! Is that Rammel sitting in the chair on the left hand side?
It's Ramalino. It's our 89 team. That's our 89 because Braux is there. Brauchley's there. So that's our 89 team.
Oh,
I know exactly where it was. So that's
and Mulqueen's in there too, right?
Yeah, Mulch is in there. Yeah.
Where's Mulch at?
To my left.
Mulch is just above Art Brinkman. Art Brinkman's on the right hand side with the white shirt, and Mulch is right behind him, looking like a little kid. So.
Oh my.
There's Bob, and Bob's right next to it.
Do you know where this was taken? Or when?
Blige is he asking you? Because I know.
No, I don't know. I'm not the one.
Bob, tell him.
We used to take the dinner cruise around Manhattan with all the teams, and we were going that time. We were leaving out of New Jersey. We would take UCLA, Virginia. We would take everybody because MetLife was playing Major League Bucks, and so was Adidas. We would take them on a dinner cruise around Manhattan.
That's it.
And at night, and that was what we were getting ready for it. And all the waiters and waitresses were aspiring actors and actresses, so they did a Broadway review show for us. So yeah, that's what that was from. So yeah,
I didn't see the water in the background. There you go.
Oh my God! Look at that beard going on, Blige.
Yeah. That Blige?
Yeah. Hey, man.
Oh my God! You know where that's from, right, Blige? You know where that's from?
Oh, we got Chucky P. We got Jack.
Bob McNulty in the middle. Johnny Mitch. Mark.
Who's the guy who looks like Chuck Norris?
That's Jack Mulder.
Oh yeah, that's Mulder.
Fair enough.
But that was in England. We were on a foreign tour. We went on foreign tours all the time. That was a foreign tour in England. Yeah, good times.
Look at those. Look at those shades there.
I know, man.
This is the same foreign tour. This is the same foreign tour with some famous characters in there. Bobby Esposito. God, look at Blige's look. Look at Blige's look there, man.
Blige looks like he's like some agent, some shot.
I mean, Blodge looks like he's about to get in a Cessna and carry some illegal stuff from Panama up to Miami any second right now.
Lexi, I agree with you on that one.
Right?
that's
I mean,
hilarious.
talk
boys.
about a
Get
cocaine
better.
cowboy. Wow.
That's a great photo.
Oh, look at this.
That's a
Look at
classic.
this. That's a lot of hair ago.
That was a lot of hair. I love it. I love it. Bob, I think he's talking about you with that one, isn't he?
No, I still have hair in those days. It was dark, but what a great group, though. There's, of course, Lex and Lino and DeQualo and Billy Andrecki. And, we had gone to 2 straight Final Fours. So, those are the 2 Final Four trophies. But great
Bob,
group.
put that back.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. I'm
One thing we get that.
Lodge,
Bob,
what were you saying?
yeah, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong. With Lino one time, we were playing in the bowl, I think, in the Rutgers Bowl. And Lino came, I think it might have been a tournament game. Lino got inside the 18 and beat the goalkeeper and then stopped and let the goalkeeper get back in front of him again and beat him again. And then he passed the ball, perfect ball across at 6, and somebody came and completely missed it. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, he had missed a PK, Lino, in the lead up to the Final Four and against Dartmouth, and we wound up winning the game against Dartmouth, and Bobby Clark was the coach. And then in the final, during the penalty kick shootout, I mean, it was kind of like a Panenka, way back when. He kind of just hit it right down the middle on Brad Friedel, and Brad Friedel, he hit it a little harder than a Panenka, but Brad Friedel was going, and Lino hit it right down the middle. It took a lot of rocks to do that. So great player. Great
Three
player.
left. I think 2 or 3 pictures left.
It's a convention when me and Lex were
Great
hobnobbing
picture.
at the convention, man. Yeah.
It's a Marriott.
Right
That's in
there.
the Marriott.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We've seen each other over the years. It's great.
Yeah, it's always good.
It's wonderful.
That's a
Great picture.
frameable picture, fellas. That's a
That's a
frameable
great picture.
Yeah, I agree.
There you
Yeah,
go,
let's
baby. There you
see.
go.
Yeah.
That's
Bob
stud-
told me that
Someone
was-
needs a burger. God, get that kid a cheeseburger or something.
All right, but the real reason we're all here today is because of this person connecting us all. That guy.
Look at that. Look at this.
What's that?
All
What
right,
were you
so-
saying, Lexi? Someone coming from where to where, bringing what?
I mean, now he's undercover somewhere. I mean, he's about to do like the biggest bust ever in Jersey history.
Oh, that's great. That's back when I was at coaching at Agawam High School.
And I dug way in the files for that one, Blodge. Way in the
Oh my
files.
goodness gracious! So I went back
Bob,
to
I
say,
want to thank you for your participation in this behind the scenes. Thank you.
Riasso.
I didn't talk to him the last day because I knew if I talked to him, I'd probably break in and tell him about the pictures.
We were on a prep call yesterday, and all I could say was like, "I got a surprise for you." And I wanted to.
that's
I
great.
was biting my tongue. I wanted to show him these photos.
I've got something for Lexi. So, Lexi,
Yep.
Can you name this song? If you could, hope you can hear it.
Can't hear it yet.
Can you hear it?
Get the volume up. Put it back to center.
Yeah, I can't.
Can't hear it.
Can you
word.
hear it?
No.
Oh, y'all can hear it. That's I Still Love Christmas.
Oh, wow. Thank you. All right. Well, see, I knew you and my mom are the ones that have heard that. Yeah, I still do music. I still put out music every once in a while for all 3 of my fans, including my mom and maybe Don. So yes, it's something that I love to do and something that was encouraged from a young age and was fostered at Rutgers. Again, one of the wonderful things about going out there, we talked about, the soccer part of it, but just the cultural perspective and, going downtown and bringing all the guys in, and we would go and play like Bleecker Street and, the Bitter End and CBGB's and all these different places, the band. And so that was one. I mean, Rutgers, let's be honest, it is infected my life in the best possible. By the way, Bob mentioned Dartmouth a second ago. I'll leave you guys with this in terms of how much Rutgers is just constantly in my life. The other day, I did an interview. The new owner of the Boston Celtics, evidently, I didn't even know this, played soccer back at Dartmouth a long time ago. And we, as Rutgers, beat Dartmouth. And we've been living free in his head, okay, for all of these years. So much so that he even mentions it when he talks about his life and he talks about the things in life and these moments in life. Now, he's a billionaire now, but all of that is to say is that Rutgers in the moment and then consistently, and now as we found out for decades, will come up and will infect you in the best possible sense. So.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Listen, can I share the screen?
Yeah, let me give you co-host responsibility.
Because I've got to leave Lexi with this. Me and Lexi have a lot in common. We both love music. Blodge says I go to more concerts than I do work. And tonight I'm actually going to another concert, Robert Plant.
Ooh.
And so, can I share my screen now?
Yeah, go right ahead, sir.
Let's see. More advanced. There we go. Let's see. I'm going to leave him with this. Hopefully he can hear this anyway.
Oh, look at that, a little rat. Now we're talking.
Rat.
Now we're talking. There we go. One of the greatest rock and roll bands in history. I'll fight you to the death.
I'm with you on that one, Lexi.
I love it. I love it. Oh, my God. This has been great. Thank you, guys. This is very cool. It's wonderful to see you and talk to you, and I appreciate all the effort that went into this. It's very cool.
As soon as I did a little research, I was like, Lexi's into music. I wonder what his favorite band is.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't take long. Not much research. You'll figure it out. It's right there.
Man. I was like, yes. Yeah. So.
Well, listen, Lexi and Bob, on behalf of the UGKA and the Crossbar Conversation, this has been a high. It really has. Talking to you guys, digging in a little bit more so that these guys can understand me a little bit more, maybe. But
we will never understand.
I know. But it's been hitting on the things that we think are very, very important, and you supporting us in the United Goalkeeping Alliance is very cool. And by the way, you probably saw we extended memberships to you guys.
Thank you.
If you would just real quickly register just to get you in there, it would be love to have you. Love to have you part of it. And just keep in touch. And I know Lexi will, We'll text back and forth during the World Cup or something.
Yep.
And Bob, I know I'll be seeing you soon, as always, man. It's always a joy in my life when you come through town. So we'll look forward to that soon. All right,
Bob.
Lexi, thank you. We're gonna dismiss the two of you, and we're gonna stay on and basically talk about the two of you for a little while.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Be kind.
Be kind.
Right.
Love you, Coach. See ya.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
What do you think?
That was
love it. I love that.
What great guys, aren't they? Talk about two personalities. They're just unbelievable guys, man. And the experiences they've had, and they're still like so down to earth, and they love the bus chops and have fun. I love those two guys. It's fantastic. I'm glad you guys had a chance to meet them and talk with them. That's great.
I appreciate you bringing them on and speaking to them. And the other thing too, and I know like turning it to soccer, it's like you hear the word trust got thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that what we're trying to establish is, I guess, building that trust between goalkeeper coaches and head coaches to like work together, and the competitive advantage you're going to receive as a result of that relationship and that trust is, to me, it's obvious, but it seems that a lot of people don't seem to believe that or care for it. Go ahead, Don. What are you saying?
Ego.
Yeah. Well, there's that. Yeah. There is that, but it's the ego less that have those Anson Dorrance. Does he have an ego? Yes. Did he understand that? Like he needed Chris Ducar to succeed? Yeah.
Well,
look at the same thing with Reasso, right? Like he knew he needed Blodge to help him. And so there was that ego with his success and everything he's doing, but he also was humble enough to know his limitations. And that's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
It's an ego, and it is a humility, but it's also an open-minded willingness to go like Pat Head Summit. I don't know everything. One of the best women's basketball coaches of all time, right? And to Gino Ariema to the same extent, same women's sport. Today, and we're finding this out, at the highest levels, it is a mutual respect and collaboration with the head coach and the staff, including the goalkeeper coach. And the ones that are shaky, the coaches don't want to they don't want to admit that they don't know it all, and they don't want to hear from the goalkeeper coaches. They don't really even. It's a necessary evil, as Alexi said.
You know what Bob was so great at? Bob was so great at his vision, his marketing ability, his ability to sell the program. But he always surrounded himself with very, very good people, that all had expertise in it. And like he said, and that's another thing, was a lot of class for him, is that he listened. He listened to the people that were around him. He was always making his decisions. Sometimes he made it in spite of what everybody else was saying, but he knew in his heart what he wanted to have for the program. And but he would always listen to everybody and get their opinions, and before really making a final decision. I respect that immensely with him. And I got to be honest with Lexi, to see a guy come in, because it's funny, like some of these things I don't remember. That's why it was so cool talking to him. But I didn't really realize how intimidated he was by the jersey and all when he came in. I looked at him and I said, "This guy's a stud right away." He's a big boy and the red hair and all that stuff. And to see where he has gone and what he's accomplished and what he's experienced, and still down to earth guys, is like he bust chops. He's so well educated and so highly experienced, and but he retains a really good grounded level. That's very rare to do, And I respect both those guys, and it's fun to be able to watch them continue on, because Bob's not stopping, Alexi's not stopping, So it was fun. It was great having them on. Their expertise is a welcoming information. They were very honest, and they hit really good points. So it was a great interview. Very, very great interview. I'm very thankful to have them both on.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And
they're fun, aren't they? The sense of
boy,
humor.
I would like to sit in a room with them at a bar, even a brewery.
You have no idea how good that is. You really don't.
Don, I want to sit in a bar with this guy. This guy right here.
Well, we can make that happen in July. We can go to the Salzburg.
Yes, we can.
That's it. Right downtown in downtown Salzburg.
We can have a hippie, an Asian, a
redhead,
and
a wise man, and a wise man.
And Eric.
And me, exactly. And this guy. Hey, well, listen, you guys, cool. I'll do final words. I'll start it, Don, to you, and then we'll let Blige have last words, if that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, what I learned, what I enjoyed, I love the camaraderie. I love the trust that's there between the three of you, and knowing that there was impact for all three of you, on all three of you individually, to make decisions from a defensive culture perspective. And not only that, but the success you guys had. Like, it blows me away that people don't see what these coaches are doing and how they got there and what their philosophies were, and don't try to duplicate it. And I found it interesting. Last point for me was the difference between Anson and Reasso around their goalkeepers and how they play them. I thought that was kind of interesting, because not everyone agrees with Anson with that, and not everyone agrees with Reasso on that.
Yeah.
But hearing the two perspectives to me was pretty neat. But it was the word trust, and the word that it just kept coming up, and the building, the camaraderie that's needed for teams to be successful in the back is crucial. And I just want to continue to reemphasize that. And Lexi also said some things to me, or to us, excuse me, that I really took to heart around communication of a goalkeeper and the frequency that needs to be said and what he's listening for. And then Bob echoed it with the importance as to why it's important. And if there's anything I would like kids to take away regarding goalkeeping, like, that's a huge non-negotiable in goalkeeping, is communication and leadership. And to me, they echoed that, but they also, the whole trust factor to me was one that really stood out.
Yeah, cool. Don?
Yeah, the trust. Once again, that's a word that we're hearing in almost every episode, people at the highest levels. And I think that could be applied all the way down into the youth level, right? Is that it's not happening. The head coaches don't want to come talk to the goalkeeper coach and collaborate. They would rather come to us and tell what they think, instead of, what are you asking our opinion? How can we help? yeah, and then the part that Reasso made right there at the end is he brought in McNulty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, humble enough to set aside his ego and realize I don't know everything. I need a guy to come in here that's older than me, more experienced than me. And what we're finding again at the different levels of soccer, be it youth, college, and on, is they're sort of phasing the old guys out, right? And I've spoke about this with the coach education, and then with the ODP at the state, region, and the national level. And I think those people are invaluable in helping to mentor the younger coaches that are coming up, which is going to have a direct impact on the youth that are coming through the programs. So again, I just, those two, they were a delight. I've got all kinds of notes. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And again, how much I'm learning through this process and where the similarities are at the highest levels in comparison to the differences below that and what's not happening. I like that Bob said it needs to be blown up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That model needs to be blown up.
Yeah.
And I've said that for years, is that, and Alexi alluded to too, throwing out the baby with the bathwater. We've just so changed everything about coach education, and that we're not producing better coaches now, which is directly impacting. We're not producing better, knowledgeable players. Maybe technically they are better. I think Alexi alluded to that. But tactically, they don't understand the game because we're making them to be robots. We're orchestrating everything for them. It's all pattern play, and the game is not all patterns. And so I thought there was a lot to take away there, a lot to unpack. I can't wait to look at my notes and reflect on this. Really can't. All right, solid. Paul, thank you. And
Steve, thank you, man.
Yeah. And now I've got a different perspective on you. Eric, thank you for the pictures. I know what his first career was. I know.
Nothing legal.
Yeah.
It wasn't legal.
I was hoping that wouldn't get out.
Bob saved you, man. Bob saved you.
Yeah. The Bob Ross hair bulging out of that hat. I like it.
It'd be a Shawshank Redemption moment.
A long time ago. I say, I bring those guys on, and thank you for those two pictures, Eric. I bring those guys on and that history of pictures just to kind of remind me what I did in some of my life. I don't always remember, but
I got to get with them again.
Yeah, it was great. In my perspective of this show, it was great. I mean, Bob is so close that we're family, and we've shared so much together in so many different realms, but we've always been there for each other. He's been a dear friend. He's when I at times didn't know quite what I was going to do and so on, Bob was always right there and always had great words to say. He's such a wise person and always knows how to say the right thing in the right situation. That's one of the reasons why he's such a great coach. Master at vision. He is the most, when we were at Rutgers, even when we were at Rutgers, Bob, I don't think there's any other college coach in the country that was so internationally, that he studied so internationally the international game more than Bob did. Bob knew, of course, it ought to help when we had Manchester United come and stay in use our locker room. Chelsea came, so we got to meet those guys, Josie and Sir Alex Ferguson, and I mean that experience alone was like unbelievable. So Bob always reached the international game. He loved the game so much, and but he travels the world. I mean, he knows people all over the place. But he's so grounded and he's such a good visionary, and he still searches. He's that guy goes 900 miles an hour, and but always learning new things. So it was great having Bob on and listen to his perspective of some of the things we did at Rutgers. It was great. And Alexi, man, that guy, I love Alexi Lalas. He's such a character. He's so well spoken. He's such a well-spoken guy. He's had ridiculous experiences. I mean, he's gone to gambit, man. Coming into Jersey, where hardly known anybody. He wasn't known very well, and it's probably one of the most recognized people in the earth right now. Everybody knows Lexi, but he carries it all very well. Like that picture with Bob and Lexi at the Marriott there. Lexi was surrounded by so many people, and he took the time with everybody. He was so gracious. And I always respect that in him, you know. Like, and I we kind of joked a little bit about where I texted him during the game. So I had no idea that he would even get back to me. Boom, he got back to me immediately, and I said, "Oh, that's so cool," you know. Um, and listen to him. The thing one of the big things I got about Lexi was out of the many was the pitch, the communication of the pitch. Because I was going to ask him, because I worked with Karen Bardsley, who played for Man U and was the England #1. And I can remember they were in the Olympics. I think it might have against France. But she says he walked out of the tunnel and there were 30,000 people in the stands. And she said, my backs couldn't hear me. So she had to work her way through voice inflection and other hand gestures and so on to make sure the communication could pass through the noise. But what Lexi said right there, he said, because of the crowds, you couldn't hear some of the things, but he said the pitch. He heard the pitch, and then he knew something had to get done, you know? That's something that's lacking in the communication of our young goalkeepers. They just talk. They're just monotonistic. They don't have any voice inflection. They got no personalities to get on the stage. I told the kids today, don't eat pre-practice. I said, you know, if you can't think you can't do something here, act. Your stage is the 6-yard box. You're on the stage right there. Everybody's watching you. You perform. And then when you get done, get off the field and then do what you normally do. But you got to change to get on there because you have a responsibility of organizing, communicating, and making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. You know, these kids really have no idea of the responsibility on their shoulders for the position. You know, it's demanding, as we all know, you know, and all of us here, and that's what I love about the UGKA is that, and Bob complimented very nicely there. You know, it's like we're onto something, and we're building it, and it's getting out. You know, we're turning heads. So I thank both of them for coming on and making it a wonderful episode. So I'm looking forward to the live gig on it, right, when we publish it. So good stuff, guys. I appreciate you having them on. Thank you, everybody, for joining us at this edition of Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blotch, powered by the UGKA, United Goalkeeping Alliance, the #1 virtual learning platform for goalkeeping in the world. That's pretty cool. We take the whisperings of goalkeepers from underneath the crossbars, and we bring them to you in open and honest conversations. There's nothing about the position that we won't talk about. Looking forward to all of our conversations that will be upcoming. You, as a goalkeeper, have chosen the most difficult position to master in the game. But remember, it's the best position in the best game in the world. Special thanks today for joining us with Eric Eisenhut, the founder of the UGKA, for offering his insights on what the UGKA is all about, as well as sharing his knowledge about the position and his passion of what he would like to see happen with it and what we need to work on. Thank you very much, Eric. It was great. See you next time. Crossbar Conversations with Don and Blodge. And we appreciate it very much. By the way, if you would like to offer your suggestions on different topics for us to talk about, feel free to contact us through the email address that you see at the upper part of the screen. That's info@unitedgkalliance.com. Once again, info@unitedgkalliance.com. That's it. Look forward to seeing you next time. Had a blast. Thank you.